This is kind of a follow-up to my video about Krauss and the accusations against him yesterday. Again, I'm going to try and keep things fairly general, but I'm going to reference things that are going on. Now, I'm primarily talking to a skeptic and atheist audience, I would suspect, for this video. So we all understand how the burden of proof works and why it works as it does, yes? I mean, if someone says God exists and we say, where's the evidence? And they say, oh, well, it's too difficult to prove it to you, just take my word for it. We're going to laugh them out of the room. And the same goes for a lot of other claims that people might make. Really, that goes for any claim, even mundane claims. It's just the demand, the level of evidence is proportional to the consequence and the exoticness of the claim. And we do, hopefully, all understand how this works. You know, we have numerous examples that we use to illustrate the point, whether that be the invisible pink unicorn, the dragon in my garage, the flying spaghetti monster, or Russell's teapot. You know, there are all these examples, these reductio ad absurdums, that demonstrate why the burden of proof lays where it does, and why shifting the burden of proof is fallacious. Trying to force people to prove a negative is essentially fallacious. The burden is always upon you as the person making the claim to prove what you're saying. Now, we apply this in science, obviously. When someone makes a claim, we subject it to peer review, repeat experimentation, and we have a reasonable demand for evidence before we believe and incorporate what they're saying. Especially if it overturns a huge body of previous science, then the demand for evidence and the quality of that evidence is going to be higher. When it comes to medical trials, when someone claims that a drug has a particular effect, we need to test it. We need to make sure that it's safe. We need to be really rigorous with it, because the consequences can be disastrous, as they were with thalidomide. We also need to make sure that the effect that the drug has is beyond the placebo effect. Otherwise, you may as well not be taking it at all. You know, it has no discernible effect. Now, this also applies in the legal sphere. We presume someone to be innocent until they are proven guilty. And this is a fundamental maxim across the legal system in the civilized world, in science, in medicine. It underpins so much of Western Enlightenment thinking. It's hard to imagine a fair or just or rational society without it. So when a criminal accusation is brought against someone, you know, we have a demand for evidence beyond reasonable doubt. As we should. I think it was Blackstone in the 1700s who put together Blackstone's formulation, where he asserted that, yeah, he would rather that 10 guilty men go free than one innocent man be punished. Yeah, and it's hard to disagree with that. And convictions in a court of law carry a severe consequence. So we have all these checks and balances and safeguards in place. Now, where we let these things slip or slide, problems seem to arise. In science, we end up with pseudoscience, or people cherry-picking individual outlying papers. And that's how you get things like the anti-vaccination movement and you know, claims of autism, or that fluoride is terribly evil and shouldn't be put in the water supply. People running on authority and fright and trying to scare people, and that overcoming people's rational and objective processes of thought. You know, that's a problem. The same thing in medicine. We have people going on others' testimonies. And that's how you end up with people drinking fermented cabbage water, or burning holes in their skin, or giving up proper medicine to only do herbal medicine and then dying of a completely treatable cancer. Yeah, that's a problem. It's how you get miscarriages of justice. So many convictions have been overturned that were gained on the basis of testimony and then later overturned on the basis of genetic and other evidence as forensics have improved, as things have been looked into. Even people on death row have been acquitted on the basis of that. So we can see how there's this immense value in objectivity, in distance, in consideration, in having that demand for evidence. Now, it can be more difficult in some cases in law, and this is where we really get into the thickets and things get a bit tricky. Some crimes, there's no body. Some crimes, there's very little evidence. Some crimes, it comes down to one person's word against another, or even many people's word against another. And these are incredibly difficult to prove to the standard of beyond reasonable doubt, because you really need physical evidence or recordings or confession, some kind of trail to prove that something has happened. And this upsets us when it comes to certain interpersonal crimes, particularly sexual crimes, because these generally do come down to one person's word versus another with very little, if any, evidence, so they're incredibly hard to prove. And this leads some people to suspend their rationality and their objectivity because they want to see people convicted. And it is a problem that we don't have enough convictions, but it's not necessarily the result of some kind of inbuilt bias in the legal system, even gender bias. I mean, sex crimes against men are even more woefully under-prosecuted and under-convicted. But how far are you willing to go in order to get these convictions? Do you want to suspend justice? Do you want to remove the right that people have to be considered innocent? Some people do seem to want to do that. There was a push in New Zealand to move to an inquisitorial system of justice when it came to sexual assault, sexual abuse, and rape cases. Fortunately, that was overturned. Because in an inquisitorial system, you have to prove your innocence, which would mean there would be a lot more innocent people going to jail because the burden is shifted fallaciously onto them to prove that they didn't do something. That's a problem. Within the United States university system, there have been problems because the standard of evidence was dropped from beyond reasonable doubt to preponderance. And now many universities are being sued successfully by people who've been excluded because of sexual accusations made against them. That's not just, and the system is catching up to it, but it demonstrates the problem that even a slight relaxation of our standards can cause huge problems. And we have another problem today. While the court system may not be getting sufficient convictions, there are arguably good reasons why those convictions aren't gotten. A commitment to justice, a requirement for a standard of evidence. But increasingly, the court of public opinion, the social sphere, society around us, social media, this has become the court for a lot of people. And a lot of companies base their actions against their employees. A lot of companies and institutions and governments base their actions on a kind of knee-jerk reflex reaction to a tweet storm or some kind of expose or leak of someone's private conversations. This goes the other way of the courts. People are convicted far too easily in the court of public opinion. It was essentially a single tweet that ended the porn star James Dean's career. Similar things have happened to a whole bunch of other people, and as this frenzy of Me Too goes on, a lot more people, doubtless many of them innocent, are being caught up in that storm, and this mob mentality, this dangerous social lynch mob. People are losing their jobs, people are losing their positions, invitations to speak are being cancelled, protests, and on the basis of what? A bold claim without any supporting evidence. It seems like the courts are perhaps too slow to convict, but it seems like there are good reasons for that, while the court of public opinion is too quick to convict, and there don't seem to be good reasons for that. I don't know what the solution is, because if we want to maintain any fair standard of justice, we have to demand evidence. If we want to maintain any base standard of rationality and objectivity, we need to demand evidence. But that demand for evidence does mean that guilty parties are going to go free. And that's the price we pay to minimize the convictions and excoriations of the innocent. There may be better ways, things we can do. Be aware and gather evidence when we go into encounters, things like that. But I honestly don't know. But I do know that I am not willing to sacrifice objectivity, distance, fairness, justice, and the rights of the innocent on the basis of a moral panic. Your mileage may vary, but that's where I stand. And again, these are general principles. I would love to hear some solutions, if anyone has them, for dealing with these problems. But honestly, I don't see one that doesn't end up with some great injustices happening. Zang.